yet. We move through our days one moment at a time with a graceful heart. There is no race for us to run and no benchmark of success for us to complete. We cherish this day, this sky, this mystery, and this ground beneath our feet. And so it is. Yay. Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I hope that helps us be in the moment. And Peter, it's 10:35, so let's start. I'm sure you're recording now, and I'm going to go ahead and read my introduction for Katie, and then Katie will do your introduction. So, hopefully this will make sense. Welcome to the Blue Ribbon panel. Let me do that again. Welcome to the Blue Ribbon Time panel. I'm Pat Burns, the co-founder of the Orange County Children's Book Festival. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of Good Grief, helping kids cope with sadness and loss during the COVID crisis. Kate McCarroll is a tenured track professor of English at Orange Coast College, teaching freshman composition and children's literature. She also oversees the Campus Writing Center. Kate, like all teachers, was affected by school closures and the rapid shift to online education in the wake of COVID-19 this spring. As an English professor, she's interested in how the power of stories can guide and heal people experiencing anxiety and trauma in their lives. Kate will address these emotions with today's heartfelt panelists as they share their stories and methods for dealing with all types of separation and sadness. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Pat. Thank you so much. I'm really excited for you to ask me to be part of the Orange County Children's Book Festival this year. And I'm excited to kind of be here and talk with everybody about children's literature and how that helps us kind of navigate trying times. I would like to first introduce our panelists today. So I would like to introduce our children's authors, Patrice Karst, best-selling author of The Invisible String, The Invisible Leash, and The Invisible Web. Anastasia Higginbotham, award-winning author of Death is Stupid. Maggie Grinnell, author of Isabella and Penelope, and Melissa Fisher Goldman, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in grief and loss. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to talk to you today about children's literature and how it relates to COVID and this kind of interesting place that we find ourselves in. I'd like to get started by asking Melissa, as a grief expert, can you tell us why the topic of grief is so important to talk about in regards to children, and perhaps some signs that kids might be struggling with the circumstances surrounding COVID-19 and the pandemic?
Sure, I would love to. Let me just say I'm honored to be here, and I'm so grateful that you're having this panel, especially here in Orange County. We have a great need for grief resources here. The statistics just a few years ago were that they thought an estimated 17,000 children in Orange County had experienced a significant loss, as self-reported. And what we're talking about here today is relevant because a loss or a death, grief doesn't have to be about somebody dying. Although, unfortunately, with this COVID crisis, we are experiencing death as well. But it could be the loss of going to school, of seeing friends, of being able to spend time with grandparents. There are so many things we are all grieving during this pandemic because grief comes from change and adjustment and our emotions related to that. And having books like the ones written by the authors here today is so valuable for children because so much of their understanding comes from parallel experiences, seeing things on television or other children acting them out or in books. So it's so important to help them understand their feelings and the experiences that they're going through.
Yeah, I think books can be like a really important tool for helping kids understand the world and even the hard parts, right? So I have kind of a question for everybody, our authors. Your books address the topics of death, loss, anxiety, and separation, which can be difficult topics for young audiences. What inspired you to write your books for some of our youngest readers? Let's start with Anastasia.
What inspired me was that all of those topics are difficult for me too. I had the experience growing up where my family was very loving, and very connected, and yet you weren't supposed to be sad, and it wasn't cool to be. If you did get sad, it needed to, move it along, move it through. And so I learned a lot in trying to understand that. I learned a lot that I then wanted to pass along, where if you have the courage to see your child through their experience of grief and loss and change and upheaval and disruption, which is going to be part of their life, their whole life, then you can learn about your child, more about them, because they feel safe to show that internal experience, or at least to allow themselves to have the internal experience, even if they're not sharing it with you. But they know that, those are things that can be survived, that heartbreak and pain can be survived. It can be expressed, or it can be, it can be processed privately. And it's part of strengthening your own flexibility, resilience, and ability to have that stretchiness in your loving connections with people, with animals, with your life as it is, so you can ride through those disruptions.
Thank you very much. Patrice, what about you? What made you want to write for such young audiences, young readers?
Well, initially, I had no plans on being an author. I was a single working mom, and my little boy, who's now 28, but he was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. And he used to cry when I would bring him to preschool every morning. He had horrible separation anxiety. And so I just started telling him what was obvious to me, which was that we were connected by an invisible string. And one day I just told him that we're connected by an invisible string. And one thing led to another. His separation anxiety stopped literally that day. And then all his friends wanted to hear the story about the invisible string. And I realized that I had something pretty special. I had a tangible way to explain the abstract concept of love, and something that could comfort children. And that was 20 years ago. I went to a small publisher, and it got published. And in my wildest dreams, I would have never known it would become the #1 children's book for any type of loss, death, grief, separation anxiety. But it has. So yeah, that's how I would answer that. I never planned on it. It just sort of happened that way. And I'm very blessed that this message has gone as far as it has.
In your afterword for The Invisible String, you talk about how your book has been used to help, guide, and heal. How do you think your story and others' stories like it can comfort children, especially kind of in times like these?
Oh, during this pandemic that we're all living through we've never had sales like we have for The Invisible String right now. It's always, done very, very well. But just that idea that we are all connected by a string, even though we can't see, for the children, maybe they can't see their grandparents right now, or their friends, or their teachers, or, fill in the blank. They can't be in the physical presence of a lot of people they love. So this idea of an invisible string that connects them anyway, and that can be tugged and felt on both ends. I think, if there was ever a time for this book, it's now. But a lot of people always say, your book is for grief and loss and all that, and that is very true. It has become obviously a very helpful book for that, but it's really just a celebration of love. It's just what love is, which is that we're all connected by invisible strings.
And can you talk a little bit about the invisible web as well? When I read that, I felt very grounded in the moment that we're currently in.
Yeah, what an ironic time for that book to come out. It came out on April 2nd, I believe, deep in the pandemic. And that's the book that I wrote where, once we all realize that we are indeed all connected by invisible strings, what that really means is that we are living in an invisible web that's made of love. And it's a very, very, very powerful web. And one good deed on one end of the web can, circumnavigate the entire planet. And, love transcends time and space. So it's a global book. It's a book that says we really, at the end of the day, are one big family, and we are living in a web of love. And the more we take care of our web, the more we take care of each other, the stronger the web is. The more we forget about each other, sad things happen, like wars and poverty and everything else. We are one family, and we need to all take care of one another.
Yeah, I think we're definitely kind of feeling and experiencing that in the midst of this pandemic. Anastasia, I wanted to go back to something that you said in your previous answer. Death is Stupid addresses kind of all of the different ways people respond to loss and the things that we say to each other, especially kids. And I really liked how your book kind of handled the way that we talk to each other in the face of grief and loss. How do you hope families can use your book to help children deal with those things or those emotions and kind of navigate that process?
Well, it's meant to acknowledge that the child, it helps because, I mean, it starts with a bad word on the cover, right in the title, and right in the first pages of the book, where we say bad words when we're upset usually, and the family is trying to prevent the child from being upset, and so not only is the child upset that there has been a death and they're not going to see this person anymore who is beloved to them, but they also have some questions. And so I really wanted the book to make a lot of room for the child's what's going on behind their eyes and in their gut. So the book makes space for the child to be afraid that now the person who has died can see them all the time. So anytime they thought they were alone, and maybe if, the example in the book is that the child is spraying whipped cream directly into their mouth from the nozzle. And the idea of being seen and caught in the act by someone as beloved to you as a grandparent is really alarming to the child. And also, hearing the strange and stupid things that people say can be really harmful, like she's only sleeping, when those kinds of phrases are just offered without any explanation. I go to sleep. Am I going to die sometime when I'm asleep? So that creates a lot of confusion and possible harm. So I wanted to address that lie and call it a lie, and then make some space for the fact that some of what happens when there is a death or tremendous grief in the household is that you're worried about your people. Like, the child observes their parent, their father, losing it, crying really hard at the funeral, and later on that day, that's what's kind of sticking and taking up a lot of space in their chest and in their mind. And so I wanted to have that out. So it was really like a turn over the rock, open the contents. Let's see everything that can possibly come up, and go ahead and ask your questions. Find somebody you can ask, or ask it just all alone in your room. Ask the question. Imagine what the loved one would say to you if you ask them the question, like, can you see me doing bad things from heaven? And I also wanted to leave some room for what it means to die, so that the families themselves, when they're reading with the child, can say, well, our family believes this, or we don't know. What do you think? And then there can be an interesting question about that. But it's really meant to preserve the living connections and nourish the living connections, as well as keep the name and spirit and all the thoughts and all the things you're feeling about the person who has died, or the animal who's died, whoever. Keep it both. Keep your living connections and keep your connections with the one who has died, because just because they're gone in the physical sense doesn't mean you have to stop saying their name. Say their name, make it big, make a big collage of their name, write it, speak it, talk about them, get into their stuff, and so to make a lot of room. I just want to make a lot of room for anything a child could be thinking, and also to support parents who are going through what they're going through. And here you are in your own grief about someone who has died. And this book is meant to give you some words and some images so that you don't have to come up with everything when you're feeling very depleted yourself.
Yeah, I like, just as an adult that teaches children's literature, I think that the children's books themselves can be healing, even if you don't have a child to read it with. So that intermix of talking with your kids about it or just finding comfort in it on its own, I think can be helpful. Melissa, I was wondering if you were going, or if you could kind of add to this idea, what can parents and guardians do to help kids feel connected in this time of isolation? What are some signs that they might be struggling, and maybe some tips on like how we can navigate or talk to our children about this time?
Yes, thank you. First, let me say I think both books beautifully illustrate this idea of giving children permission to have grief and have feelings. And even the title of today's panel of Good Grief, obviously it has a literary component with Charlie Brown as well. But the idea that grief is good, this is an emotion, although it doesn't feel good, that it's healthy to have. And both books do a beautiful job of illustrating that and giving children permission to say, no, this is what I need, this is what I feel, and that's okay. And adults as well. I think they also both do a beautiful job of having a message for the adult to hear as they're reading to the children or reading with the children as well. So to answer your question, which is kind of a big question, so I'll try not to take too long. I could talk about grief all day long. So let's talk first about things you might look for. So in terms of emotions, just like with adults, we want to look for duration, frequency, and intensity, meaning it's normal to be having all sorts of emotions or reactions to our grief. But if the duration, the frequency, or the intensity seems too big or is hindering daily functioning or enjoyment of life, then it might need something extra like a therapist like me or other resources for the parent to seek out for the child or themselves. Um, with all children, you tend to see an explosion or an implosion. So meaning either there's more acting out when there's grief, more short-tempered. This is, I guess, sort of true with adults as well, but we especially see it in children, especially adolescents, or an implosion. They want to spend more time in their room. They're not doing their normal tasks that they enjoy. And they're kind of internalizing it. So the more we can communicate, the more parents can have conversations with their children. Books are a great introduction to those conversations, like Anastasia was saying. And another point she made that's really important, especially with the younger kids, is to use real language. It's so important to use real language because their imaginations are so intense. If you don't, they can take it in a wrong direction and misunderstand and get ideas about death or grief that might not be real. So COVID-19 is a virus, and what it does, and how some people get better and some people don't. Just like you don't want to say somebody is sleeping when they've died, or loss is a confusing word for children because when we lose something, we try and find it. And if it's a death, the person doesn't come back, right? So real words are really important. An example, Sesame Street has some great books and videos out there. They do a great job of using real language. Julia doesn't just have special needs where she communicates differently, she has autism. Abby doesn't just have parents that live in different houses, they are divorced. They use the real words. So real words are really important. And what parents can do is they can model, they can show that they're having emotions, that this is hard for them too. We talked today about tasks of mourning. Those of us who are old enough to remember Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's Stages of Grief, those are great, but we've kind of moved on to a more generalized that kind of fits all kinds of grief. William Worden created these tasks of mourning, and they're really helpful. We multitask, we do tasks in all different order, right? We can do them all at once. But one is to accept the reality of the loss, right? So when parents talk about COVID-19 and what we've lost, maybe we didn't go to graduation, we're not going to go to school next month, we aren't having family dinners with our grandparents and cousins. That that normalization that this is real and we're all feeling it is an important task. And then working through the pain of that grief is another task. So validating that this is hard, that it might be sad, angry. Ask them what feeling they're feeling. And then we have to adjust. We have to adjust to the environment with this new loss, without going to school with our friends, with living in maybe a little bit of fear every day, or seeing people in masks every day and reminding us that there's something we're trying to avoid and trying not to get sick, or maybe we know people who are sick or even who have died. And that's hard to adjust to. And so finding ways for this new temporary normal to feel comfortable. Maybe new family traditions, new ways that you social distance and still have fun. And then the last task is finding an enduring connection with, in the case of death, with a deceased or with the change in the loss, and embracing a new life. So it's really about balance. So how can we honor what we used to enjoy, or how life was looking before COVID-19, and still embrace what we are doing now? So maybe we used to love to go to restaurants together. So now, we let each kid pick their favorite place and pick up takeout and bring it home. Or we find ways to have adventures, going on hikes and being able to social distance and be safe. We remind them that wearing a mask is about being kind, and it's about safety, and it's about the community coming together, so it doesn't become a symbol of fear or negativity. All of these things are going to help. And just listening to where they're at, being a little bit more patient, which I know is hard when we as parents, I'm a parent, when we're stressed, because we're all stressed. Balancing how much we let them see our stress is important as well. And talking to them about what's hard for us, but always leaving it with a positive. So I might say, I know mommy was a little short today because I'm a little, sad that I don't get to see grandma and grandpa, and that my work looks different right now. But what I'm trying to do is find what's good. And what's good today is that we all baked cookies together and we're all healthy and spending quality time. So if you are going to show them the negativity or the hard emotions, you want to also leave it with a positivity and a hope. I think the biggest part of how we grieve and heal from grief is through hope, right? So we know that this pandemic is going to end. We know that we're going to be, finding a way to be resilient and move forward. And both Anastasia and Patrice's books, they give messages of hope, right? The string that connects us. And this idea that you can speak up for yourself and honor the memory of grandma or grandpa or whatever the situation might be. So making sure your children feel hope. And if it feels like it's bigger than you can handle, ask for help. There are resources out there. There's therapists like me. I'm here in Orange County. My website has some helpful resources. It's just my name, Melissa Fisher Goldman. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because this is a hard time for all of us, and we want to make sure that we are as healthy as we can be going through this time.
Thank you all. That was really great information. All right, so I have just one final question to kind of pick up on that idea. So what are some stories that you remember from your own childhoods that comfort you, or that you would go back to or also recommend to find kind of solace in? That might be a hard question. Does anybody have an idea of a story from their childhood or a book from their childhood that still makes them feel kind of warm and fuzzy and happy in dark times? Oh, I stumped you. So for me, I was thinking about it this morning. The picture book, The Napping House, it doesn't address any of these big ideas, but the cadence and the rhyme pattern and things I always really liked, and it kind of takes me out of myself and brings back that kind of rosy, happier place.
What comes to I'm Patrice. I don't remember picture books so much. I don't remember young child books, but I do remember Grimm's fairy tales. And my mother would read me those fairy tales. And I think that's where a lot of my wanderlust and magical thinking and mystery, and maybe my love of writing came actually from that too, just that you could go into these incredible worlds while sitting in your, at the time I was living in England, in a flat in London. So yeah, Grimm's fairy tales popped out when you said that.
Oh, hi, Maggie. You joined us. I have a question
Hi.
for Maggie. We can kind of bounce around. So in your book, Isabella and Penelope, you address kind of loss and anxiety that can accompany the experience of losing a loved one. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind it and the role of maybe friendship or companionship in the healing process?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. This is a new computer I'm on, so I'm hoping it's working. My dad actually died of Alzheimer's, and I was 30 when that happened. So I thought, what would happen if a little girl, if her dad died, and how she would go through it? I went to a deep depression when that happened. So I just wrote this book as a little girl who just didn't want to talk to anyone and didn't know how to talk to anyone. And then and she would talk to her dad. She would go out to their favorite spot in the backyard, and they would have a private conversation together. And it was just me getting through my grief at the same time. And how I did it was a very unusual way with a caterpillar, and I turned it pink because it's a little girl that the caterpillar is speaking to, and there's a change that happens that she's able to get through her grief and then able to go hug her mom at the end of the book. So I can't give away what happens, but it's very remarkable of how she gets through her grief. And that was the whole idea behind my book, is just to write that and to show kids that even though you feel like you cannot talk to adults, just go through your own grief and just give it time. It'll eventually help you.
Thank you. I think
Sure.
Pat will hop in and have a question for you. There you go.
Great, thanks. And by the way, all of you are just offering such wonderful, helpful information. I want to thank you. I wanted to ask this question to all of the panelists. The idea of doing this panel about handling grief, it came for two things. First, the very first impetus of this was when we lost Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and the other family members at the start of this year, of this crazy 2020 year. And I really noticed that the whole country went through a grieving process. I mean, it's so interesting to me how a person that, now I knew him because he was at the book festival last year, and we worked together. But the other people that didn't know him only knew of him as a basketball player and as a, how is it that everybody could grieve even though you don't know the person? That was the impetus of the panel. But then when COVID hit, and I was working with my grandchildren with their distance learning school, and how sad they were. They would see their teacher, they would see their classmates on Zoom, but it wasn't the same as actually being with them. And there was a grief there that I thought, how does this happen? That even though they're seeing the kids, they're having the grieving. So it's a two-part question. I'd love to hear quickly from all of you a little bit about what is this global grief that happens. And then what about this grief? Even though you're seeing someone, you're still sad that you're not with them. So Katie, if I could throw that back to the panel, I'd love to hear what they have to say with that. Let's start with Anastasia. I'd like to start with you, and then we'll circle around.
Yes, I'm so happy that you put it in that context and gave us all to take it all the way back to January of this year. That experience of collective grief is so profound right now because of a death like Kobe Bryant and his daughter, because of COVID, because of George Floyd, because of Breonna Taylor, because of the fact that there is this experience of there is something quite out of our control, and it can create so much anxiety. But what is a balm on the anxiety and has been the experience of collective mourning and really addressing the tasks that you mentioned. I loved hearing about the tasks of mourning, even for children to be taught this word, to mourn, the verb, to mourn together. And there's so much that has happened for children and for adults, for all of us at this time. There's so much opportunity to love people who we've never met, who we will never meet. And to even be nourished in that relationship. There's something that came to life in a different way because we are sharing this experience of loss. And I can't remember the question exactly, but maybe I spoke to it. Did I?
Yeah.
Pat?
So yeah, what basically the question was, how do we explain this global depression or loss and anxiety and feeling and sadness? And it started, as I said, with somebody many people didn't ever know they could feel it. But Anastasia, you really hit it on it, is that it's also what we see on the news with George's knee on the neck and everything else. So let's go to Patrice and then Maggie, and then I'd like to finish this with Melissa. So, Patrice, what feedback can you give about that?
So you basically mentioned two things, and one was about collective grief, and the second was why do children and ourselves feel grief, even if we're seeing people on Zoom and the kids are seeing their teachers. So let me go to the first one. First, the collective grief is palpable. It is, energy is everything. We are energy. So we feel energy. And right now, the entire globe is going through a huge shift, huge changes, a huge awakening, a huge disruption. So, and yes, as you said, the beginning of the year, even people that weren't into Kobe Bryant or knew much about him could feel that this big thing had happened, that I think we got a taste of once again, our immortality. And the fact that, this famous basketball player could, go for a flight one day and end up, not coming home. Anyway, the collective grief is huge right now. We're all feeling it. And the way to transcend it is by all the things we've been talking about today, just helping the kids understand that, yes, there's a big thing going on that is causing a lot of pain for a lot of us. But there are also things to really be celebrating right now. And they can't take nature away from us. We can still go out and be in nature. We can still dance, listen to music, cook good food, The second part I wanted to address was the grief of, even though the kids can see their teachers and their classmates, they still feel grief. You bet they do. Because since the beginning of time, we have lived together. There's something about being in the physical presence of another human beating heart that is the natural state of affairs. As lucky as we are that we have these platforms right now, that while we're going through this, we can still connect with each other as we're doing right now, it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is not natural, this is not normal, this is not tribal, this is not primal, this is painful. And sometimes I think even seeing their friends and seeing the teacher on the screen almost rubs salt in the wound of, why can't I be with this person? So it's a double-edged sword. I don't know. We all have our different feelings and beliefs about all of this, but I really believe that human contact is not something to mess with. It is not something to mess with for very long. We've done this for a very long time now. Humans need to come back together, because that's the only way this is a sustainable model, because there's many other pieces going on besides just a virus. There's all the collateral damage. So it's, see if your child is getting more harmed by the realization they can't see their friends and family, and see if it's not, because I've seen it go both ways.
Thank you. Okay, Maggie. Maggie?
Yes, hi. So I actually work in a hospital. I work in the emergency room. And so I see parents that bring in their kids and they're kind of scared when they come back because we had to change because of the COVID, the way our emergency room is set up. So it looks more like a big laboratory. And so I've seen the parents do something kind of fun. They'll just make it sound like, oh, it's a secret maze that they have to go through. So they're trying to take the child's fear out of that. And, I kind of smile behind my mask. So um, the child doesn't want to get scared anymore. When I have to go in there, I usually have a scrub top on that's like Disney related. So I talk to them and try to bring down their fear of that. Um, but as the other issues, I would say definitely human contact is something that I'm hoping that we can all come together soon with, because especially working in the hospital, we don't get to get that too much. So I would say just make things fun for the children, make a game out of it, and then I think they won't be as scared to go through everything.
Thank you. Okay, and Melissa,
Sure.
let's close out with your comments about the global and individual loss.
Sure. Anastasia said something really important. She talked about control. And right now, part of what makes this so hard or maybe creates some more anxiety and grief for all of us of all ages is that it's a reminder that we don't have as much control as we would like. So finding acceptance for what we can't control, but also finding the things we can control and giving children things to control, like, do you want peanut butter or turkey for lunch? Little things like that is going to help. Or a lot of kids kind of in that older grammar school age, almost to middle school, they're a really common way that their grief manifests is through somatic symptoms like headaches and stomach aches. So honoring that. What do you want to do to help your headache today? What do involving them in the process is going to help some of that. But you're absolutely right. We are experiencing a global grief, a global almost minor trauma, if you will, as we have, and multiple, with losses of public figures, with Black Lives Matter, and of course COVID-19. What we know, though, what can bring us hope is that in history we've had a lot of global traumas, of global griefs, right? Whether it be World War II, the Great Depression, the last pandemic of the Spanish flu, in our generation, September 11th, when parents sent their young men to Vietnam and they went to sleep scared and they woke up scared every day. And what we know is that most people ended these time periods of grief and trauma and came out the other end successful and happy, and there are always outliers, but now we have more resources likely than ever for these outliers. So let there be a message of hope there. Hope is healing. We will get through this, and you let the children know that. That doesn't mean there won't be difficult losses or stumbling blocks along the way, and we will hug each other again, and you will be in a classroom again. It just might not look like it used to look, and that's going to be okay because we're going to find a way for it to work for us. And that's always what we want to talk about with grief. And I think most grief books, and especially the panelist books, they have a message of hope. And why that's important is because we don't get over grief, we get through it. We never stop missing or loving the person or having nostalgia when we think back on, missing prom or kindergarten. But what we do is we can experience grief along with joy and love and contentment, and we can have happy lives with the things we've lost. And that's what we do as we grow older and we have a bigger life. Nobody has a life without some loss. So this is just one that's on a bigger scale that we're experiencing together. I do want to take a minute also. Did I answer your question enough, Pat?
Yeah, and we do need to wrap it up pretty
Okay,
quickly here. So
really quickly want to say we talked a lot about how parents can help their children. I just want to mention that parents help each other as well, yourselves. This is a very stressful time for all ages, but especially when you're also worried about your children and making difficult decisions about their mental health and their safety. Just know that we can work on our mental health. We have control over that more than we do our physical health or catching a virus or what happens when you get it. So there are resources out there, but take a lot of self-care, take deep breaths, take care of you. It's okay for this to be hard and to feel like you're not doing your best, because when you think you're not doing your best, you probably are, because the best way to parent is through love and best intentions, and that's all we can really do.
wow, that was really, really a beautiful way to close out that. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to throw it back to Katie, and before I do, I want to just celebrate. We've just got maybe about another minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I just want to thank you all so much for being part of this. It's such a heartfelt topic and a difficult topic to talk to, but I think all of you bring something to the table that is so important. So, Katie, I'm going to take it back to you to close it out.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to know if anybody has any kind of final thoughts before we end. And I also wanted to thank everyone for your participation today. So any final thoughts?
Sure. First of all, and thank you, Pat, for pulling this panel together, and Katie, thank you for moderating, and to all my panelists, I've learned so much today. My closing thought statement is: love is alive, love is real. We are all connected by invisible strings. We really, really are. And I have a string now to every single one of you that happens to be watching this video, whenever you're watching it, whether it's, in a couple of weeks when it goes up, or whether it's 5 years from now. We're living through this together. We're one family. Love is all there is, and I love you.
Beautiful. Anyone else?
Sure. I do want to say that I want to appreciate everyone on the panel, and I learned as well. I really enjoyed listening to all of you, and that invisible string, and that invisible web, and that private conversation in the backyard with the dad that Maggie described, and we wouldn't feel loss or sad or grief if we didn't feel so much love, like Patrice mentioned, if we didn't enjoy so much our physical connections, our emotional connections, our spiritual ties to one another, and those bonds. Those bonds are real. And so I enjoy and am appreciating what this time offers in terms of what's happening now, instead of what do you hope will happen in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or a year. What's happening now? How can you show and receive care right now? How can you express your connections right now within these parameters, with these masks on, with this 6 feet distance, or much, much more distance? What are the ways we are going to evolve in order to nourish those connections and be fully present in what the reality is now, as harsh as it is? Let's use it. Let's use how we feel here and the juiciness of that to really transform who we are as a culture, and give and receive love as freely as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Katie.
I had a professor in college who always used to say it's all connected. And I think that we kind of helped to illustrate that today. So I thank everybody for being here. I think your creative and your professional work is really helping people through this difficult time. So I appreciate you guys talking to me and taking part kind of in this discussion.
Thank you.
The more we talk about grief, the less stigmatized it is, and the more we can give
Yeah,
the help they need and heal. So congratulations for putting this together. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And be sure to share this on Facebook and Instagram when it goes up. We want the message to get out to as many families around the world as possible, not just here in Southern California. So, Peter, let's put everybody back up so we can just all of us wave goodbye and say much love to you all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.